So yeah, I'm going to ask a bunch of questions, and we're going to open up to you guys. So if you're thinking of anything while we're here, feedback? You hear that?
Don't ask me if I like Cyclops, though.
No, we're getting into Cyclops because Cyclops is my dude, and she doesn't like him. So yeah, so think about questions right now while you're sitting here and you're ready for stuff. Is it this one?
I don't know.
That's already better. Thank you. And we're going to open it up to you guys. We'll pass the mic around, let you guys have some fun with that. So, how many cons do you normally do a year?
I try not to keep track because then I will feel overwhelmed. I probably get about 150 inquiries or so. So one reason I'm really happy to be here is I don't get to come to the smaller, comic-centric, super creative, all about that and all about the people who come too often. So I'm just really honored to be here, and it's been amazing so far. So thank you guys for coming.
And you don't come out to the East Coast for a lot of cons.
I do, because I'm usually in New York.
Okay.
And I've done Baltimore, and I've done Annapolis. I've done, some.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I do. I am from the West Coast, though. That's probably. He's like, you don't get out to the East Coast much, but I do.
Okay, very cool.
It's just that, like, I've done Heroes Con, and I do MegaCon and things like that. But I do try to spread it around as much as I can so that I can get to areas that I haven't been before. Because I love to see comic readers from everywhere, and I love seeing different areas of the country and the stores and the way they run them, and the people who go to them. And it's just been such a privilege and such a change in my life to be able to do that and meet people from all over.
So when you get a break from dealing with us awesome people, what are you working on right now? What are you gonna go type out?
Right now, I am finishing up Hot Shots now. And with Hot Shots, I'm really proud of this particular run because I think it kind of shows why Marvel is special and why Marvel is different from other comic book companies out there, what makes them special. It's kind of, you get the feeling of that in this Hot Shots run. Also, I am working on Death Defying Devil for Dynamite, which is something I love. Pulp Heroes, he's a Golden Age hero. He was probably one of the first urban vigilante style heroes that I can think of. And this particular story, Walter Giovanni's drawing it. He was the artist for Red Sonja, and he's amazing. He's making it look gorgeous. And it's kind of, we get to see what it's like to have superheroes in kind of a Twilight Zone story. So it's really, there's nothing else like it. It's really different, and really proud of how it's coming out.
How did that start? Did you go, hey, I want to write this kind of book, or did they approach you about that?
It's sort of both, because I do things for Dynamite on and off, and they know what my tastes are, and they know, okay, I've written so many female characters in a row, which I love, but now let's do something a little different. And they know I like those classic heroes, and I like to kind of put a spin on them. And so whenever they'll come to me with a few projects, and then I'll pick one that I think sounds really exciting and different that I can do something different with.
I got to jump on that really quick. How cool is it that people go, I got a bunch of stuff for you to work on. Which one do you want to do?
I know, that sounds really bad.
No, it sounded amazing. It sounded incredible.
I have, for those of you who don't know,
just pick a thing. You can do it. We'll let you.
For those of you who don't know my origin story, I was a hairdresser. And I started writing humor pieces online just for fun. And that led to a weekly column, and that led to Simpsons, and then Deadpool and Birds of Prey. And so it's just like a really weird origin story. But being a hairdresser, which I loved, it was a creative field, and I liked doing it. But you're tied to that chair. You really are. And this has just done so much for my life. And I thank every single one of you who buy comics, who support the industry completely, because it just has opened up my world so much, being from a little tiny farm in Oregon, outside of a tiny town, dreaming of being able to travel and see the world and stuff, not knowing and being told repeatedly that it could never happen is quite extraordinary. So I was the wrong everything, just so you guys know. And I feel very fortunate.
So a lot of writers, they use whatever their medium is to explore a different part of themselves, to get out there and, you know what, I'm going to write. We're talking about Swamp Thing earlier, and Len Wein doing stuff there, and exploring his own darkness and doing stuff like that. Any of the books that you've done where it's really like you're putting yourself into it, or kind of going through a journey that way, using it as, therapy almost, to write a story about anybody? You can say no. I don't know.
I don't really approach writing quite in that way, because I feel like, you know how people have that cliche, write what you know? That's all great and everything, and I think that it's pretty good advice, but my advice is try to know more. And so know more outside of yourself. And of course, things are going to come from my perspective, but I try really hard to make them come from other people's perspectives, other, points of view. And so, I have a training in theater arts, and we were taught, in university on how to build a character from the ground up and layer them on and figure out how their dialogue would be and what their speech pattern would be and that kind of thing. So creating characters, I do it more like that. They're not really avatars for myself. I like to try to reflect society and what's going on in society more. And like, if you take a look at when we did the reimagining of the ventriloquist in the Batgirl storyline, it was definitely a reflection of people who are addicted to celebrity. And so I would take things like that and put them into the stories and the characters, and Batgirl having post-traumatic stress disorder and just different things that we're dealing with today as a society will make it into the book. You're gonna see things from my perspective. I feel very strongly that my early experiences with Batgirl, for instance, was on the syndicated Batman television show, and I was a super shy, social anxiety kid in school, the only one with red hair and super fair skin and freckles and all that, and I was teased a lot, and then being shy on top of it, it was pretty traumatic to go to school. And I lived on a farm, and we got barely any TV, and what we did get was like black and white news and black and white bowling and things like that, and so boring. So I read a lot from a really young age, but one day we were watching that Batman television show, and Batgirl came on, and first of all, there was all this color and action and vibrancy, and then there was this character who was a smart librarian who I felt was smarter than Batman even, who could kick ass. And it just opened my eyes so much that I literally went to school the next day and raised my hand more, talked more, fought back against people that were teasing me and things. So it just made this huge difference. And when I started going to conventions and seeing who was attending conventions, because you hear, I'm in a little tiny town, didn't have a comic store, you hear all the stereotypes of who reads comics and stuff, and I started going to comic cons, and it just wasn't true at all. And I felt like comics needed to open up. And so that's the perspective that I come from. So yes, it is me, because I have that feeling that people should be able to experience that, not just a certain type of person. And when I write something, I try to approach it as try to think of something we haven't seen before.
So without going into story details, of course, do you have like a dream book? Do you have something you're like, man, I wish they would give me the reins of something?
There's a couple characters that I'd love to write that I haven't
Cyclops?
had a chance to. I don't know if you want me to write.
We're gonna have a coffee later and have a deep discussion about Cyclops.
I would love to write the Marvel family, meaning Shazam, Mary Marvel Jr. I would love to do that. DC knows that I would love to do that, so I don't know if it's ever going to happen. If it hasn't happened yet, we'll see. And then Spider-Man is another one. I would love to do Spider-Man, and I like the idea of getting back to a slightly creepier version of him. Funny, but creepy too.
Cool.
Like he was when he was first created, but modern, if that makes sense. And then, like, speaking of projects that I'm working on and trying to do things that I haven't done before, another thing that I'm doing is I am what they call the architect of the superhero universe for Lionforge. I just say I'm a superhero guru. It sounds a little bit more like what I'm doing. But and so how many people are familiar with Lionforge, with their books, because they're nominated for quite a few Eisners this year, and they publish books for everyone, which is really exciting to me. And when I first got the call from them and they explained the company mission and stuff, I was just like, this is what I've been dreaming to happen for, all my whole life, really. And they start talking about their superhero universe and Catalyst Prime, and which basically is a unit as Earth. It's very real world, very modern. Some humans were exposed to a certain thing that gave them different powers, that manifested powers differently. And I'm writing this big event comic for the company that'll start coming out in October called 7 Days. And 7 Days is basically this superior being comes to Earth, and he takes over all the media channels, all media, and he says, I am taking over Earth. My planet's dead. This is my new planet now. I am going to kill every living thing on this planet.
As you do.
Yeah. Every living thing on this planet is going to be annihilated, and I'm going to create it for me. But I'm not a monster. You have 7 days to get your shit together and figure out what you want to do in those 7 days. So we see what happens when the entire Earth has PTSD because there was an event that happened previously that was traumatic too. And what they do with those 7 days. Some people will, kind of hole up in their house with their family and spend those 7 days with their loved ones. Some will go out on top of a building and start shooting people. Some first responders will not show up to work. If you're a fireman, policeman, border patrol, any of those, do you bother going to work in those if you only have 7 days left to live? So we really see what happens to Earth when it's given this situation.
And that book again is called
7 Days.
And it comes out?
Comes out in October, starting in October.
And you can,
by Lionforge.
You can get that from your local comic book store.
Yep.
Support your local comic book stores, everybody. Go order the book.
And it's the one thing that I love about it is the characters are very varied. There's a lot of variety. We see what superheroes born of today are like. And that's really exciting for me too, because we don't have 70 years of history that we have to try to make fit into today's sensibility. This is already there. And so I'm really proud and really excited, and the creative teams that are working on the books that follow 7 Days are amazing. We're separating things into genre, and we have tons of variety, like I said. And for those of you who maybe have seen Quincredible, written by Rodney Barnes, which is a young African-American boy in New Orleans who only has the power of invulnerability. He doesn't know how to use it. He doesn't know anything. And it's one of the best teen new superheroes since Ms. Marvel, in my opinion. It's so good. So if you that's already on the stands. If you haven't checked that out, check it out because it's really well written and beautiful. And then I'm also working on a Dungeons and Dragons adventure. Which is really amazing because it's this really cool world where the main characters are birds. But it's just, the art is amazing. It's a gorgeous world they've built, and it's called Humblewood, and I'll be doing that.
The second you started saying that, my friend Matt over there, he's like this.
My husband and I met playing D&D, so
well, yeah,
eventually I had to get there.
He loves you and he loves D&D, so he's like, say what? So what is this going to be? Is this going to be a comic or is this a D&D adventure?
It's going to be a D&D adventure, but I'm writing the comic that ties into it.
Super cool. That's really cool. So has there ever been a storyline that you wrote and you go back a couple years later and you're like, damn, that was good? Like, do you ever, which ones make you really proud?
I don't know that I've ever said, damn, that was good.
Yes, yeah, because you're good.
But I'm really proud of several things. I'm really proud of the Birds of Prey run because there really hadn't been anything quite like that before. We had a team of women who were different from each other, who liked each other even though they didn't always agree, and they could get shit done without fighting about boyfriends and, you know, getting into those kinds of things. So I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of my Wonder Woman run, especially the Circle story, which is the first arc that I wrote, because it's completely female. It deals with so many feminine and female-oriented themes that really hadn't been explored in Wonder Woman before for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe because dudes wrote it, whatever. You know, because it deals with jealousy and sisterhood, and, you know, what would it be like to live on an island of women when only one person is allowed to have a child. And so we dealt with a lot of things like that, and hoarding, like once Wonder Woman started having, you know, a love interest, what would that be like? And so we reversed a lot of power positions and stuff in the artwork for that. That really hadn't been done too much before either.
So tying into something that you just mentioned, over the last couple of years, we've seen a lot more women writers taking on big books, headlining a lot of books, and it's changed the dynamic of comics. It's changed the tempo of the story, all of that, and it's really it's so amazing to watch. It's such a great thing to see, and it's about time.
Well, it's amazing. Yeah, I'm so proud of all the female writers out there in the storylines they're doing, and that they're not being stereotyped into doing only certain types of books and things like that. But imagine, you know, we have a ways to go. I'm not going to lie about that, but we are doing, you know, from 10 years ago, we've come a long ways. But imagine I was on so many panels in the beginning where I was the only female on the panel. And I was literally explaining why different shapes of boobs are important. You know, because we had so much of the same body shapes in comics and same everything, just a different hair color and different costume. And so, you know, explaining and then moving that on to, not just women, onto other characters too, why we needed more variety, why would we purposely cut out potential audience because we just are focusing on this one thing. And so we had a lot of weird conversations. A lot of people were very open about it. A lot of people were not happy about it.
And it's something subtle like that is an obvious thing. Like, you draw all the dudes different, why don't you draw the women different? But it makes a difference. Like, my daughter's looking at the comics and it connects with her. She understands something like that. And it's like you said, it's amazing people don't think about things like that. But it's very true, even with the best artists out there.
Who write or draw what they like or want.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need to know more and get beyond that. So think about maybe your audience a little more.
Very cool. Who are your favorite other writers right now? Let's get some shout outs.
Oh my goodness. Marjorie Liu.
Love her.
G. Willow.
Can you hook me up with an autograph? I've missed her at every con. She's always busy.
I never had her autograph.
But you met her parents.
Yeah, but I've met her parents.
That's
cool. To hang out. Tom King. I'm trying to think about people who are currently doing Don Layman.
You like Tom Taylor a lot.
Yeah, Tom Taylor's one of my absolute favorites.
Yes,
I met him when he was first starting and in Australia, and I remember saying to him, because he was telling me something that was going on with an editor, and I said, Tom, do not let them take the heart out of your writing, no matter what. Hang on to that. And I don't know if he listened to me or what, but that's what really attracted to me to his writing in the very beginning, is it always had this really amazing sense of heart to it. So I'm really glad that he became as successful as he has.
Any artists you really want to work with?
Kubert.
Okay.
I've been so blessed with artists, you know, it's hard to, you know, pick out something like that. Like with 7 Days, I'm working with a new artist that I haven't worked with before, and he has done a few things for DC, but he hasn't really blown up yet. He's from Brazil. Jose Luis is his name, and the art is amazing.
Yeah.
I think after 7 Days, he's going to, you know, be doing probably more bigger projects for the big two. But I like to work with artists that are right at that point too.
So for your scripts, do you normally? I've seen so when people do these comic book scripts, the writers, there's different ways to do it. You can have a lot of direction in there for the artist. You can have just a little bit. If you know the artist, you're a great team. You know, you need less direction. Do you tend to put a lot of detail in how you want the panel to look and set up, or do you really mostly focus on dialogue?
I actually do have some scripts at my table, so if people are really super interested in what a Gail Simone script kind of looks like, you can come down there and look. Or in this Red Sonja trade paperbacks, there'll be one script in those.
That's super cool.
Yeah, so I write what is called full script. And when I first started writing comics, I'd never seen a comic book script. I didn't know really how to do it. The people at Bongo very carefully, not carefully, but said there's about 4 main ways. This is what they are. Choose what you think works best. And then I've kind of refined it since then for myself. But I would say a 22-page comic is probably about a 50-page script for me, just to give you kind of an idea. I always tell the artists that if they come up with a better way visually to tell the story, to go for it. I have no problems with that. So I really try to focus on, like, if you read one of my scripts, you're reading a story, basically. I mean, I'm giving art direction and stuff, but I want the artist to know the emotional state of the character and what their motivation is as well, so that they can figure out better visually how to tell that story, because body language matters, all that. And sometimes, what a character's saying is purposely not matching their body language because there's a little story in there too. So there's just a lot of different ways to do it, but I do not like doing Marvel style, the old Marvel style scripts where you do the plot, then the artist goes off, breaks it all down, does it, and then you come back and do dialogue. It takes me about 5 times longer to do this way that's supposed to be so much faster.
It's not your way.
No, it doesn't work for me personally.
Very cool. Before we open it up to audience questions, anything else you want to plug, you want to talk about on your end?
I do have a couple fun Stanley stories, if anybody wants to hear those.
I want to hear it. Oh, I got something. So I was curious. Do you have any Stan Lee stories?
I miss his presence so much. So the first time I met Stan, and of course he's this large figure, and anybody who read comics growing up or anything, all his little editorials he did and he's just this huge figure. And I was on a panel and we were talking, and then partway through the panel they're bringing in a special guest that was the surprise guest.
He crashed it.
Yeah, so Stanley crashed it, which of course everyone is super happy to allow to happen, right? So he comes up on stage and he's introducing, or they're introducing us to him basically. And he sits down next to me and he leans over and he says, "And who are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm Gail Simone. I'm just a comic book writer." And he flipped his shit. He said, "You don't ever say you're just a writer. You are a writer." And he went into this big long thing about how the writing is important and the art's important too, but you're not just a writer. Don't ever put that qualifier in there. And I was just like, "Okay, sir." I won't do that anymore. And so, it was just, he didn't know who I was or anything at that point, and he gave that, comment that really changed the way, because at that time I was still a hairdresser too. And so it really changed the way I started thinking about being a writer, because growing up, I was always told, I always wanted to be a writer. There was no question about that. But I was always told there's no way you'll ever make a living writing. So I didn't really pursue it. I pursued other things that were creative that I thought I could make a living at. So, when people say stuff like that to you, don't necessarily listen.
Listen to Stan Lee.
Yeah. So that was really cool. And then I saw him several times in between, and we always had like fun little conversations. But the last time I saw him, he literally tried to run me over with his rascal scooter. We were backstage in this big warehouse area, and he just comes flying. I didn't even know those scooters could go this fast. I think Stan had superpowers, because it was just kept screaming through there, and he was laughing his ass off. That was hilarious. And so it was awesome to see him, even though he was in a scooter, he was still Stan. He hadn't given up. He was amazing.
That's
He's
so
90
cool.
years old at the time.
Yeah.
Laughing his butt off.
That's so excellent. All right, anything else? You want to open it up?
Well, let's open it up.
Okay, so I believe I have a cordless mic. I don't. But I have this guy. If anyone who does have a question wants to walk over to this side, we'll just hit you one at a time. Don't be shy, come on over. But first, as you're lining up, so this is Uncle Gary. He works with us on Uncanny Nerd.
Hi, Uncle Gary.
Hello. Gary is a comic historian. He's one of those that just knows all the stupid, silly details about everything. And he wanted. I was going to give him the honor.
I just wanted to make a few statements, really more than a question. I just wanted to tell you, first of all, props. My wife is a redheaded hairdresser, and I know where you're coming from.
So, in other words, she kicks ass, right?
Oh, she kicks ass. Redhead and a hairdresser, you're putting two hard combinations together. I want to tell you that I have a little booth over there where I'm recommending comics that I want newer readers to read. And Secret Six is going to be on that list, of course. Birds of Prey, Leaving Megapolis. Wonderful work you've done, but I just wanted to tell you that I know a lot of people, they give Miss Simone so much credit for how she writes female characters. She writes the male characters incredibly too, and no one seems to focus on that. I want how you write Ted Grant, Wildcat, amazing, wonderful. That again, wonderful storyline in Birds of Prey. How you write Bane, the most sympathetic version of Bane that I've ever seen that she wrote for Secret Six.
I really did not want to write Bane. They asked me to put Bane in Secret Six, and I did not want to write Bane. I wasn't really interested. And then I started thinking about, well, if I could do whatever I wanted, if I could, add something to his character, what would I do? And luckily, they let me do it. So then I started liking writing.
So you were pleased with the end result?
I liked writing that relationship with Bane.
Wonderful, wonderful relationship. And the main one I want to really give you so much credit for is Scatman, a one-note Batman villain. No big deal. It's just his big deal. It was a cat motive instead of a bat. She turned this one-note character into a flesh and blood, complex individual with just incredible motivations and the leader of this dysfunctional team. And it was just an amazing version. And I couldn't believe that I was saying, damn, Catman is one of my favorite characters. But that was under your tutelage, and I want to thank you for that. So thank you.
DC was pretty skeptical, I have to tell you. And so, because I said, no, wait, Catman, we could send him to Africa and he could, live with the lions and remake himself, and it'll be like DC's Tarzan/Hunter. It'll be awesome. And they're like, whatever, Gail. But Dale Eaglesham sent the first page of art of him reimagined, where he's standing on the cliff in Africa in his loincloth, basically, and his hair in the breeze. Then they were all like, okay, now we understand.
Very well done. That was very well done.
Hi, Gail. So I'm going back, also from a theater background.
Awesome.
So I'm just curious, you talked about the character study. So are you doing that just on your own, or do you have other actors that you have in that sense that are trying to portray some of the characters that you want to look at?
That would be lovely, but this is how the reality of it is. I am sitting there crocheting, drinking tea, like some weird, I don't know what. And all of a sudden, because that's what kind of cleans the slate of my brain. And then all of a sudden, I'll start making faces like the Joker, or something going on in clean room or something weird. So you've got this person sitting there crocheting that suddenly changes. The only time I ever do anything similar to that is once in a while I'll have Scott, who happens to be pretty good at doing voices and is a great singer.
All right.
Because I just wrote a song for My Little Pony, and so I get help like that from him, or like my son is a black belt in Sure You Take Karate, so I'll get some,
Insight.
Yeah, stuff like that, and maybe positions and stuff. But it's all just my brain and the internet.
That's money. Well, thank you very much. And call me anytime. I'll do the same thing.
Hello. Hey.
I did used to have our son read, like if we were on a long road trip, I'd have him in the back seat reading the Gus Beezer books because he was about that age when I wrote Gus Beezer. And it was a little bit based on him, and so he did the most perfect version of reading Gus Beezer out loud.
So I have two questions. One is related to 7 days. I thought it was solicited in July. Is there a change?
It was. We have moved it back. Lion Forge has purchased Oni. For those of you, I don't know how many see this in the news or whatever, purchased Oni, so they've kind of reorganized a bit. And it's kind of put us to where we want to be super comfortable with the product coming out. And
Very
the things
excited.
that are coming out after, because we have teams working on the books that come out after 7 days right now.
Are
So,
the creative teams on the books changing after 7 days?
some are and some aren't. We still have Amy Chu.
And Alex?
And Alex Packnettle is still going to be on Kino. And Rodney's still on Quincredible. We have some secret weapons coming aboard that we can't announce quite yet, but
But there are people you know.
Yeah, but I am super duper excited about.
And then about your, you do the script style, but before you get to the script, how detailed do you get in terms of laying out a page in your mind, in terms of how many panels, with, you know, what's going to be in each panel? How detailed do you get before you start to actually write the script?
There's a lot of brain time going on. Sometimes while I'm crocheting, sometimes while I'm kayaking, sometimes while I'm walking dogs, just whatever, you know. I think writers are wired a certain way, and it's the hard part is turning that off and giving your brain a break. But so, for example, when I was asked to write Wonder Woman, and I finally said yes, I would like to write Wonder Woman, I think it was about 8 months before I sat down to write the first script, because I was thinking about tone, style of story, what I thought about Wonder Woman worked from her original inception, how to update her, you know, all these kinds of things, and then, you know, what type of stories I wanted to tell before I sat down to script. The puzzle piecing, fitting together, scripting, I'm usually doing when I'm sitting at the computer and I sit down and do that. I'm not a detailed outline person. Like some people do these amazing detailed outlines. I'm just not like that. It's all up here until it gets on the page.
What? Thank you. Thank you, sure.
Thank you. So I also
Don't be scared.
I also have a
She's
question.
really nice.
As long as you're not dressed like Cyclops, it's okay.
Well, apropos of that, I would never in a million years accuse you of trolling online. But do you have a favorite fight that is inexplicably broken out in your Twitter feed due to no fault of your own?
No fault of my own. I don't know about that one. I think I have to take blame for most of what goes on there.
How do British people make tea?
Yeah, that one's been pretty good, and it's gone on for a long time, and people are getting real creative with their jokes about it, so I'm enjoying that one.
I was honestly tempted to bring a bag of Lipton with me. But on a more serious note, you were asked before about what characters, dream projects you'd like to write. Are there any dream projects kicking around your head outside of comics? Have you ever wanted to write a novel or a screenplay or anything like that?
I've written screenplays. Especially, I wrote the Wonder Woman animated film screenplay.
Right, yes.
I've written, how many did we count? 4 animated, 5 animated, no, not counting the Wonder Woman movie.
Yeah, Tomb Raider,
Okay.
Tomb Raider, My Little Pony, Brave and the Bold,
And Justice League Unlimited.
She gets asked to do a lot, but you know,
Yeah,
hers kind of was
and
fun.
also I have a couple things that are in development right now, Crosswind being one of them, and when it gets to the scripting writing stage for that, I'll be doing, involved in that.
And Clean Room has been optioned.
Yeah, and Clean Room's been optioned. Can't really talk about any of this too much, but, so I like what I'm doing in terms of having a variety of projects. I definitely would be interested in writing a screenplay. I'm very interested in script doctoring, going in and seeing like if we need to add dimension to a character or do something with the dialogue, or I'm tired of seeing movies that have no ending. I would love to be able to come in and help with some of the endings. But anyway, I'm interested in all of that stuff.
Thank you.
But you'll never leave comics, will you?
Yeah, no, I think comics is kind of where my home is, and I don't ever plan, like, comics are never like a point for me to like write comics to get to film. I just don't look at it that way. I look at it as I'm a storyteller, and I'm happy to try to tell a story using any medium that might come my way and be challenging. I've even told stories for advertising agencies.
I have a quick question about how you approach villains. I see a lot of redemption arcs in your stories for villains, like Savant from your first Birds of Prey arc, from your Batgirl arc. I see a lot of the villains got complex, sympathetic portrayals. What makes you decide that a villain that you're working with is worthy of a redemption arc? What makes you decide that this villain is somebody who can be sympathetic, who can turn over a new leaf and make a change, and which villains are not, if any?
That's a long, kind of complicated question. Okay.
Sorry.
I do believe in the power of change. I believe people can change. I believe people can change their viewpoints, exposure a lot of times to things that they maybe were against or ignorant of can change their mind. So I personally believe in that. So putting that into a villain, or someone who, we view as a villain to start with, and have them have an arc where they do have some sort of change is interesting to me, and I think it's possible, and I like to do that. But sometimes you just have someone that's so screwed up that their viewpoint is not ever going to change, because this is the way they're wired, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. And the Joker is going to be, a character like that.
Right.
So that's kind of the determination. It's like how ill are they?
Yeah. Thanks.
Very cool. So really quick break. Is there anyone out there who cannot, so maybe a disability, so an injury, cannot actually get in line, but you still would like to ask a question? I could bring you a mic. We good? Awesome. Next.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. So Batgirl is obviously pretty important to me. I when I was growing up, like, the episodes with her and the Dark Knight animated series were the most important episodes, because I needed at that time to. I needed all my life to believe that girls could save the world too.
Well, I'll just interrupt you just for a tiny second. I feel like Batgirl's character, the important part of her character is that she should be the hope of Gotham. And I think that when that's not done, it doesn't feel like Batgirl to me. So anyway.
Yeah. To me, so like she always acted on her own initiative. She took maybe inspiration from others, but she was never a sidekick.
Right.
Like, she saved the heroes in many instances. And flash forward to after college, I got my degree, and then I ended up working as a mechanic in a shipyard in Newport News, and finding myself in some ways that were kind of terrifying moving forward. And then reading Batgirl, an issue came out where she embraced her roommate for being transgender, and I felt this was before you had much anything in media. You had like nothing that was really positive regarding trans characters. They were murder victims, or they were twisted. They were messed up.
Yeah.
And
More stereotypes.
it made me feel like I was okay for who I was. Like, I was scared of parents and everything. And so we talked. I messaged you some online, and we talked about how like Alicia, after new teams took over, she was brought back by popular demand, and I was wondering if there was anything in the works, possibly not having to give like spoilers details, but to bring her back in any like kind of a big way in any coming arcs.
I can't really speak too much about that because I'm not writing like the normal the main Batgirl arcs or Birds of Prey or anything, but I am going to be writing a certain Canary at some point, so there might be a possibility.
Okay. Could I ask one more quick question? We'd also talked about transgender writers online. I was wondering if there were any particular like transgender writers in comics that were among your favorites or that stood out to you.
Yeah, I like Megs a lot, and I'm so thrilled that she is getting so much attention. She's nominated for the Eisner. She's got television shows that are actually being filmed, not just optioned. So it's like really happening for her. Lila Sturgis is great. Trying to think. Those are the first two that come to my mind lately, especially Megs, because I talk to her quite often, and she has had to put up with so much shit publicly and privately that the fact that she, success, it's the best revenge. So I'm really happy for her.
I just want to say thank you for everything you do.
Hello, Gail. You mentioned earlier that you were an animation writer. What are some of the challenges as an animation writer versus doing comics? Because that's something I don't see from a guest at cons who are animation writers.
Well, when you're writing a comic book, you might have like 1, 2, maybe 3 editors, an editor, assistant editor, and then the group editor or whatever. When you do animation, you probably have at least 10. So there's a lot of input, more input through the whole process, I think, than just being kind of in your own world writing a comic. But it's still storytelling. You still have to have those emotional beats. You have to, tell something compelling enough that someone wants to watch the complete episode. You need to have a bit of a roller coaster emotionally and that type of thing. So those things all stay the same for me, but it's just I have to use a certain program when I write animation, where I don't use a program when I write comic. It's a little more freewheeling. So, it's just more people involved mostly.
Hi. Hello again. Hi. As a writer, how do you strategize with working within an established universe and the editorial constraints of that versus when you're working on creator-owned work or when you're the guru at Lion Forge?
There's a couple things. When you're working in a shared universe, it's a shared universe. They're not your characters. Someone else is going to take the reins after you. Someone took it before you. So you have to try to not be too precious about it. Although I have to admit, whenever I leave a series, it's like a divorce. I just can't talk to it, look at it, anything for a while until I make my peace. So even though, going that in, I can't do my best work unless I get totally involved and both feet in. So there's that. Now, when I get to do creator own and build a world from scratch and be, the whole puppet master of the whole thing, what I like about that is I like being able to bring in characters that we haven't seen before. Like with Crosswind and with Leaving Megalopolis and Clean Room. These are characters that we haven't really seen in comics before, and that's what I enjoy, creating those worlds like that. So those are the main things, but again, you still have to have those storytelling elements and in place no matter what you're doing.
Thank you.
Cool. We got about 5 more minutes, so these are the last 2 questions. No more getting in my line.
I was wondering if you'd seen the thing about the female Joker on Twitter, and what do you think about it?
The statement I made on Twitter is that, it would be interesting, but I have Joker burnout. So for me to even start thinking about Joker stories and stuff, it's going to be really tough because I'm really burnt out of it right now. I'm sorry. I agree. He's an amazing villain. I like the psychology of villains in Gotham, but I'm just really tired of Joker.
Who do you like in Gotham? What villains do you like then?
Just like any. I love the Penguin, the Mad Hatter. I like Scarecrow, because I have a different take on them. So I like writing those. The Joker, when I was so glad in Death of the Family that I finally got to have the Barbara Gordon Joker confrontation. But I literally had nightmares, and it just, it's a weird headspace to be for too long at a time.
And last question.
I actually have a Joker question. So.
I told you I'm burnt out on Joker.
Not exactly. You definitely have opinions about the Killing Joke that you've made clear, at least people on Twitter.
Yeah.
But to me, it's just really interesting that you worked on the Batgirl arc that kind of dealt with issues relating to that and the whole thing about the PTSD. So I'm just kind of curious, the creative process there where you're working with a plot element you weren't terribly fond of, but you sort of made it work for you.
Well, it's the thing, and first of all, you know, I didn't create Oracle. Oracle was born out of that Killing Joke story, and that was someone who took terrible story point, in my opinion, not DC's opinion, anyone else's opinion, in my opinion, and made something good out of it. Because Oracle is an amazing character. She, you know, and it was right in line with how I feel about Barbara Gordon. She's gonna try to make the world better. Anyway, she has to do it. And Oracle was a great example of that. I was asked many times while writing Birds of Prey how I felt about bringing her out of the chair and back into being Batgirl. And I said I thought it was a terrible idea because she was such a great character as Oracle. And then when the New 52 happened, it was going to happen with or without me. And I did not like their idea for it when they came to me with it. And I said, I don't want to write that. They said, well, but I already told so-and-so that you were on board for Batgirl. I said, well, if we can do this, then I will write it. And that was what I felt like, taking that incident that happened and making it a real world type thing, because there are people who do have surgery and do have rehabilitation and can, you know, regain their
mobility.
Yeah, mobility today. But I did not want it to be waving a magic wand and have comic book voodoo all of a sudden cure her. I thought that was such a disservice to the character of Oracle, to Batgirl, to the fans that supported that character all along, and I just was not the slightest bit interested in doing that. So once they agreed that we could make that part of the story, that she would have, you know, have survivor's guilt, she would, because people that she was in rehab with and stuff didn't regain that much mobility, and have the PTSD from the actual violence that occurred to her and she had to live with it, made sense to me if they were going to do that. And so that's the only way that I would agree to write it, because I just did not like what they were saying before.
Very cool. So guys, thank you so much for your questions. Give it up for you guys.
Thank you guys for coming. You're all amazing. I've seen most of you at the table already, so thank you.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end. You can subscribe here. So subscribe to the channel. There's more videos off to the left. Mr. J says, don't forget to ring that bell button for more notifications.